I am William Martin. I was in Engine 83 on September 11th, 2001. And we were just starting the day tour. I had worked the night before, and my group was actually in to work that day, so I was scheduled to be on the rig that day. So it was just a typical, beautiful Tuesday morning. I was probably not thrilled that the Yankees were in the playoffs again and the Mets were playing golf, things of that nature. But we had a covering captain it was his first day in rank, had come over from Brooklyn. So we were discussing how much bigger the buildings were and how much hotter the fires were and things like that in the Bronx. Just regular shop breaking, getting ready for the day tour. And then the first plane hit. So we were obviously startled and bewildered because it was a gorgeous day. I mean, it was a beautiful, as they would say down here, a Carolina blue sky. And, we just didn't know what was going on. So I called my wife quick and I said, hey, listen, it's going to be a long day. We're going to be used for manpower at some point. This is what's going on down there. And, don't wait up. I had an 18-month-old at the time, and I said, I won't be home for dinner even because this is going to be a long day. And we hung up, and then, we kind of watching the TV, getting the rig ready for the day tour. And then when the second plane hit, we got turned out almost immediately on that alarm. And so my wife called me quick, and I said, listen, I'm getting on the rig right now. I got to go. And so that was the start of the day going to ground zero. We have a kind of a code in the fire department. You got to take care of the probie, the new guy in the house, and we don't want to get them hurt. We don't want to get them injured in any way. We want to teach them to be good firemen and learn the ropes. So we had a young guy named Joe Licurdo. While we were getting on the rig, he tried to get on the rig with us. And, looking at what was going on down there and things like that, I told him he couldn't come with us because I didn't know if we were coming back. I mean, it was ugly stuff from what we could see on TV. And then obviously the closer we got, it was just getting worse. So I assume he's still not mad at me for not letting him on the rig, but I just felt duty bound to not let him on the fire truck with us that day. And we did lose several probies that day because they felt their call to duty and they did get on their rigs. So with that, we take off. We get a sheet to tell us where to go. And nobody really looked at it. We just assumed we were going down to the trade center. So we jumped on the rig, out the door we went, and we were, we were going over the 135th Street Bridge to get on the East Side Highway, and we were stuck in traffic because everybody was looking south to the towers because you could see the smoke just billowing over Manhattan from our vantage point way up in the Bronx. And people were frantic. People were on their phones, and I remember a lady in traffic. She was hysterical, crying, and she looked up and she yelled to me. I had the window down. She yelled up to me. She goes, "How bad is it?" And I, not knowing, of course, I said, "It's really, really bad. It's really, really bad." And with that, we moved in traffic, and so we were hammered down. We were going down the east side, in a fire truck. Really nobody in our way. When somebody, I think it was the captain, actually looked at the ticket and realized that we were not where we were supposed to be. So I always say it was like a divine intervention. When I speak to schools and churches and things of that nature, that's the title of my story, is divine intervention, because there's 2 or 3 scenarios where we could have been killed, and we weren't. So the captain looks at the ticket and it says that we're supposed to go rendezvous with some other companies in Harlem, which was right over the bridge from us. And so he radios Manhattan. He says, Engine 83 to Manhattan, where do you want us? This is where we are. I think we were in the 70s at that point, really making good time. But we're supposed to be in Harlem. Where do you want us? And they said to to go back to the firehouse in Harlem. So there we are. And I always tell the kids that I speak to, I said, you know, we're the New York City Fire Department. We do not run away from the danger. We go to the danger, and we take care of business when we get there. And so here we are going northbound on 3rd Avenue away from the danger. And I'm literally hanging out of the fire truck, looking southbound and cursing my brains out because we're going in the wrong direction. And I wasn't too thrilled about it. But, you know, we're a paramilitary organization. We had orders. We got to go to where they tell us. So we come flying up into Harlem. We pull into 35 and 14, and there's all the other rigs were already there. So as soon as our captain checked in, we all got in the rigs, and we started a convoy down to the trade center. Right about that time, the West Side Highway had opened up for emergency vehicles. So we kind of made our way through the north part of Central Park, got on the West Side Highway, and then it was, you know, we could go as fast as the rigs could go, which was only about 60 because of the governor, but which always bothered me. Why does a school bus not have a governor? They can go like 75 miles an hour with kids in it, and a fire truck can't. But anyway, that's an aside. So, you know, there's a lot of radio traffic with what was going on with the South Tower. We didn't know exactly the extent of that collapse. We knew that there was a 1060 given, which is a major issue aside from what was going on with the actual plane crashes and the fires. So we didn't know that the entire South Tower had collapsed. So if you can imagine being in a fire truck and not knowing that. So when we pulled up, we kind of parked over by the Stuyvesant High School bridge. I don't know if you're familiar with that metal arch bridge that leads over to the school. We parked in that general area. We got our gear, and we started making our way down to the North Tower to check in with the chief to get an assignment. And so we're walking down, and you know, we know that some other things had gone on, but we didn't realize the extent of it. And there was still a dust cloud from the first collapse, but we just chalked that up, or I did, to smoke and other things going on from the towers. And so we're walking down, and people are, it's a frantic situation. There's people running everywhere. There's people screaming. There's radio chatter on the walkie-talkies and the handy-talkies. And so we're getting closer to one of the pedestrian walkways that go from the towers across to the water. And again, we're trying to check in with the chief to get an assignment. And we're basically just going to walk in the building and find a chief at some point. That's my thought. But as we're walking down to the trade center, you know, the smoke is billowing, the flames are billowing out of the building. And all I can think of is, you know, there's 6 engine companies here from the South Bronx and Harlem. And I'm 27 years old. I'm full of piss and vinegar. It's going to be a long day. We're going to take a beating walking up these stairs. But, you know, you have 6 aggressive engine companies on the scene to help put out this fire. And that's what we were going to do. We were going to go in there. We were going to kick ass, save lives, and put out the fire. And there was no doubt in my mind of that. And so the closer we got, you know, you're looking at this monstrosity, and people start screaming that it's collapsing. And I'm a country bumpkin from upstate New York. I'm like, what's collapsing? You know? And sure enough, the World Trade Center in front of me is collapsing in on itself. And so I watched the antenna. When that disappeared in the smoke, the fight or flight kicked in, and I realized, man, I gotta go. So I grabbed my friend Dave. I said, run. And we just started running. The 5 of us just started running back up West Street toward the fire truck, or some semblance of safety. But we were inundated with the collapsed cloud, and we got pushed to the ground, and it was complete blackness, you know, for a while. And then we kind of regrouped. We called out Engine 83, and we all figured out where we were. And then we just kind of went 2 arms wide, the 5 of us, down West Street to try to find civilians and direct them in the right direction to what we would consider safety, away from the collapse zone, of course. And that's when we realized, you know, we're trained for that secondary thing that maybe there's a gas or an incendiary device or something like that. And what was in my mind was that ricin attack in Japan a couple of years before that. So we put on our masks, our SCBAs, and to walk down into the fray, as it were. But we realized that we really couldn't function well with them because it wasn't an apartment, it wasn't a project apartment, or it wasn't an old law tenement where you know what you're feeling and what you're looking for in the buildings. This was completely different. It was kind of like being in an open air maze and you couldn't see a thing. So we kind of dispensed with those. We kept them on our bodies, but we didn't wear them initially. So I had some medical masks in my pocket. I gave one to the captain. I had one, and I think they lasted about 15 minutes between the grit in the air and the sweat and just the goings on at that particular time. I think those masks lasted 15 or 20 minutes. They were useless down there. And then of course our eyes were burning because of all the stuff that we come to find out later, between the cement and the glass and whatever else was in the building, the asbestos. So it started off, as an irritating day, and it just obviously progressed to get worse, physically in your eyes and your mouth and all that stuff. So, like I tell the kids, I said, we're trained to be aggressive interior firemen. And the collapse of the World Trade Center took that knowledge, or what we would use as that knowledge for, away from us, right? There was no more fires to put out in the building. There was no water source. The collapse had destroyed the infrastructure under the towers. It destroyed the infrastructure around it. So there's no hydrant water. There was no water in the standpipes in the buildings. It was all residual. So we hooked up to the standpipes to put out the fires, but there was only just whatever was in the system because it couldn't be fed from anything. So there was no water to put out the fires. And everything was on fire. Everything was on. There was fire trucks, cop cars, ambulances. There was a beautiful blue Camaro down there that was burning. I was a little miffed about that. But the papers in the air were on fire. It was an unrealistic scene that we were standing in the middle of. And to top it all off, it was just deathly quiet. Deathly quiet. It was unbelievable, except for some handy-talky chatter and guys that we were standing with and talking to, trying to figure out a pseudo game plan initially. It was unreal. It was so quiet, and the papers and the dust coming down. It was like a snowstorm. But it was unnerving how quiet it was. And then I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube video. There's a video of when our pass alarm started going off. Not the ones that we were wearing, the ones that the brothers were wearing that were buried. And that's an alarm that if you go immobile for more than 20 seconds, it starts having a shrill beeping tone. And the longer you lay immobile, the louder and sharper it gets. And so as we're standing there, we start realizing that these things are going off all around us, but we can't find anybody because they're all buried. And that was, that was aggravating because we were, now it was a search and rescue mission and we couldn't even really rescue them because they were buried. So that was heart-wrenching. We did wind up finding during the course of the day, two firemen that had taken refuge under a fire truck. We got them out, but obviously they had been deceased. And then they had another guy that they took down. I think he was coming off the Marriott. I think because he was being jostled, people kept thinking he had some viability, that he might be alive, but he had been burned and crushed pretty badly. And he wound up succumbing to his injuries as well. So that's the only. I was down at Ground Zero a lot in the ensuing weeks and months, and that's the only day that I was involved in finding actual whole bodies. Everything after that was body parts and pieces. Until I think the last time I was down there was sometime in November or December, but that was the only day that I found that I was involved with recoveries of actual whole bodies. So, you know, it was it's good to have them have closure for their families, because I know a lot of people didn't get to do that. So I always tell people, in the pictures that you see of 9/11, you can tell kind of the time of day, because most of the firemen still had their SCBAs on early in the morning after the collapses, because we didn't know what was going on. And then when the other guys started coming in, the off-duty guys, or guys just couldn't, the weight of the equipment, guys started shedding the SCBAs later in the afternoon. But all morning we wore our stuff just in case. We were tasked with putting out different fires, and literally different fires, and to no avail, because there was no water. And that's when the fireboats pulled into the harbor. We started pumping hose, hundreds and hundreds of feet of 2.5-inch hose, dry of course, into the seat of Ground Zero, trying to put out the fires that we could. And then they were pumping the water from the fireboats to some of the tower ladders and into the hoses that we had down deep in the pit, Ground Zero at that time. But from what I recall, those fires burned until the beginning of December. So for that many months, we were inhaling, whatever was burning, the smoke, the asbestos, the benzenes, the glass, the cement, all that kind of thing. As opposed to just the dust that was in the air. These deep-seated pockets of fire were burning and burning and burning for months. So it's hard to imagine something burning for that long, with the thousands and thousands of gallons of water that was being put on it at any given time. And I'm sure I'm skipping something here, but it's like I said, we were tasked with different things. At one point, Dave Carpenter and myself were tasked with manning the temporary morgue. So we were sent over there for, I don't know how long it was, an hour or two, maybe 2 hours. And people were bringing in the deceased for us to kind of put toe tags on and somewhat in an orderly fashion organize them until the coroners could get there, and the morgue guys. But I don't know why we got pulled back out of there, but I was kind of happy that we did, because that was unnerving to see that, and knowing that the hospitals, in hindsight, that all the hospitals were waiting for the wounded and the injured to come, but I always tell the kids that I speak to, and even the adults, I said, it was a really weird day, because you either got killed or you lived, for the most part. There were very few casualties. There were certainly only a few rescues. Fortunately, there were some rescues, but there weren't many rescues. And it was either you made it out or you didn't. I had a friend of mine in the South Tower. I didn't know he worked there at the time. He was a friend of mine from high school, and he was always a terrible listener in high school too. He kind of did what he wanted to do, and when they told him, they made an announcement, just kind of stay at your desk, stay in your offices, everything's fine. It's the North Tower has an issue. He was like, hell no. And he got out of that building and ran to Brooklyn and wound up saving himself. But it's just funny that you find out later that there are people that you knew that were in there that wound up living, which is kind of nice. So excuse me. Like I said, we were tasked with several things, but a lot of it was just climbing over this pile of unstable debris, and it's hard to explain to people how big the piles were. I mean, it was, if you get I always tell, I have a picture that I show the kids. It's if the fireman is 10 feet tall, this pile of debris is towering over him. It's like 70 or 80 feet tall, and it's like playing Jenga. you pull out the wrong thing on the bottom, and everything above that is coming down on you and the men you're with. So it was really grueling work trying to find people, knowing that anything you did could wind up getting other people hurt, or getting yourself killed, because we were going in voids, and we were searching for people, and we were looking for firemen and civilians, and anybody that was possibly alive, for hours and hours. And it was grueling work, because you had to really be cautious of where you stepped, and how you walked on things, and not to mention the pockets of fire and the smoke and things like that. So we did that for several hours. Again, with no water, it's hard to put out fires. Thankfully, the fire boats were there. At some point, my in-laws were cops and stuff in Harlem, and so they were all over at my house consoling my wife, because they all assumed I was dead, because of our proximity to the towers from the South Bronx, and just the total mayhem that had gone on. So somewhere around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I found a phone in one of the offices, and lo and behold, you press 9 for the outside line, which nobody knows about anymore, and I got a dial tone. So I called the house, and my brother-in-law answered the phone, because my wife was outside with my little guy, and he was just elated. I was so happy that somebody was actually happy I was alive. He was elated. He's like, "It's Billy. He's alive. He just blah blah blah." So, but up to that point, they had all thought I was dead, which is a weird feeling in hindsight. But I didn't talk to them long. I talked to my wife. I told I was safe at the time being. There was no guarantees, because what was going on down there was just insanity. And then I hung up, and because I wanted other guys to call their loved ones, because it was because we had at least a shot at that. So we gave we talked to some people for a while, and then again we got tasked with doing some searches in some buildings. I remember some people kept calling the Manhattan dispatcher, I think, from an elevator, and they kept saying, "We're trapped in this elevator. We're trapped in this elevator. Send somebody to get us." And so I think several units had gone to find these people, and they couldn't find them. And some guys from the Bronx were listening to it on the radio, and they had made their way down there during the course of the day. And several hours later, they actually found that elevator where it was in the shaft and stuff, and all the people inside had succumbed to smoke. So again, it wasn't nobody was really safe down there that day. These people were just at work, trapped in an elevator, and several hours later they died of smoke inhalation. So it's still taking its toll. I think we're up over 220 firemen have died from 9/11 related cancers. I know the cops are over 200. All the volunteers, doctors, nurses, dogs. I mean, it's still wreaking havoc on the 9/11 community as a whole. And people are just dying too young.
Was there ever a point in the day that you felt fear? Weren't you afraid?
I've always said I'm too dopey to know any better. Yes, I was afraid, but I wasn't afraid during the collapse, because I knew that I was running in at least a safe direction. For some reason, I didn't have fear there. I just, it was like I said earlier, the fight or flight, self-preservation. Later in the day, I thought that I might get killed doing something, or something might happen. Maybe a secondary attack even. But I was more afraid after the collapse, because at least now I knew that the building couldn't fall on me again, right? But everything from the building could possibly injure or kill us. So there were certain points that I thought, that we may not make it out of this day after all, even though we survived the collapse. So yeah, I was afraid, and I tell the kids that. I said, the precarious positions we were in, the places we were looking into, they weren't certainly safe by any means. So again, we're not, we're used to an apartment or a house. You kind of know the layout of those things. But when you're thrust into these huge piles of debris and crevices and crannies that could just collapse on you at any time, it's a different ball game.
You said it's sort of there, but for the grace of God, it could have been, you could have been one of the 343 FDNYers who died that day. Why do you think you were spared?
It's funny, I have a tattoo that says there, but for the grace of God, for that specific reason, because literally it was divine intervention. So if I had been driving the rig, or my friend Dave had been driving the rig, I think we would have looked at the ticket. So, and that's not a shot at Mike, but we were the closest firehouse to the firehouse we were supposed to rendezvous at. So if we had looked at the ticket, we would have been there early. We still would have been down to the trade center well before the collapse with the other group, with the other 6 engines. So we probably would have been in the building. If we had just continued on the path we were doing, going straight down there without looking at the ticket, we also would have been in the building. So we probably would have been killed. So if we had gone down there by ourselves, all right, we would have lost 5 guys. But if we had gone with the other crew, we could have lost 40 more guys, because that's how many guys were in those other rigs. And I've been up at the ski races in Hunter, and I've seen guys at different junctures over the last years. And I've had guys come up to me and say, hey, 83 engine, you guys saved our lives that day. And we didn't do it on purpose. It was divine intervention that we just didn't go we didn't go where we were supposed to. And, I don't know if you know much about firemen. We're not great listeners anyway. So, but fortunately that's how it turned out, where everybody that was in that convoy was spared.
There's a thing called survivor's guilt. Have you experienced that?
I think we all have, to some extent. I always wonder, what spared us, what made us not be, involved in those numbers. I don't have guilt of surviving more than I have more guilt of not being able to help more people. We could only do so much, obviously, but I always felt that we got cheated out of doing more for guys. I don't know if that's true or not, but I was down at the medical office to see Dr. Kelly, who's the head psychiatrist there for FDNY, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, stay right there. And he goes and he gets a book out of the office, and he comes back and he says, read this. And it was all the stuff I had just been telling him, and it was literally the definition for PTSD. And I didn't know that. I just, was in a bit of a funk or whatever. But I had gone down there, I'm a pretty practical guy. My thought process was this: my lungs, my health is pretty much already compromised, right? Because I was there the first day of the initial collapse, and all the doctors say, you're screwed, basically. So my thought process was, once the fire department got accountability of us all, and they put us on a schedule, and then they had a volunteer schedule to go down there and work the pile. So I volunteered for that, because my thought process was this: why would you send an uncompromised guy down there? Right? Just send me. My lungs are already hammered. So just send me down there and keep the other guy healthy. So I did that. I think they were 3-week stints, and they were different hours. I forget, but I mean, it was. I felt good going down there. I felt like I was helping. I felt, maybe I was trying to overcome the guilt of not being more helpful on the first day. But I really was thinking that less guys should be down here for their own health. But, guys, firemen, we go to the danger. Nobody wanted to say, oh, I didn't go down there. Everybody wanted to go down there. So after the third 3-week or 12-day tour, I I went back to volunteer again. One of my lieutenants was like, no, I'm not sending you down there anymore. He said, go study for the lieutenant's test or something, but you're not going back down to ground zero. So, but you know, it was just one of those things where I didn't think anybody else should really have to get sick necessarily. Not that they are, but I mean, why take a chance, you know?
That's amazing.
So that's the guilt I had, was not doing enough on 9/11.
Tell us about your health now.
Again, I am blessed beyond measure. My health is great. I have, I have the PTSD. I have short-term memory loss from that. I have, you know, some anger management issues sometimes, but you know, I don't really chalk that up to 9/11 so much as being Irish. But I mean, I feel good. My wife takes good care of me. We had a health scare a couple of years ago with a doctor, and my lungs. And fortunately, he was wrong, but it hit home to my wife that, wow, you really could get sick at any given moment. So I take a lot of supplements. She tries to feed me healthy, even though I opine I'm a sweets guy. I like to claim that sobriety is killing me, but that's probably the greatest thing that came out of it was that I quit drinking years ago. It probably saved my health. It certainly saved my marriage and my time with my kids. Because, you know, you can use that as a crutch. You know, it can define, you know, 9/11 defined a lot of guys, for good or bad. It put them on the trajectory for the rest of their life. And fortunately, you know, I married a great girl, and she takes care of us. And so my health is good. I mean, I should run more. I should lift more weights. But you know, I'm working. I work hard, and you know, just trying to stay healthy for the kids. I have a 12-year-old. He's my youngest, and I say he's going to kill me or cure me anyway, because you know, I can't keep up with him half the time. But you know, I have a 21-year-old. I want to see my daughter get married. She's 18. You know, I want to walk her down the aisle. So I'm trying to stay as healthy as possible to do these things.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Not without crying, maybe. One of the most poignant things. We left the pile sometime around midnight. There was no relief policy. The captain called Manhattan and said, "Hey, listen, you know, my guys are shot. We're leaving. If there's no relief policy, we've been here for 12 hours or whatever. You know, we're going back to the Bronx." So we picked up a guy who was walking, and he said, "Hey man, give me a ride back to the firehouse." So we said, "Sure." Sorry.
Okay,
Anyway,
take your time.
well, we got up to the firehouse, and there was a whole bunch of women standing outside. And so a whole bunch of women standing outside, and all those guys got killed. And about all the crappy things I saw that day, that hurt the most. But so, you know, they're all standing out there crying, and we roll up, and I'm sure they were thinking, "Wow, our guys are here," and it wasn't their guys; it was just us. And I think they lost 14 guys from that firehouse, 54 engine, and 4 truck. So, that's the one that hurts the most for me. And not to mention losing, a bunch of friends um, that where I was in Proby school with, I played softball with. We lost Tommy Scholes, was from our firehouse. He was working in a different firehouse that day down in South Manhattan on that rotation that we had a training schedule. He was only on the fire department for 2 years, so I missed Tommy. But everybody else seems to be good. The other, Mike and Dave and Paul and the captain, I think everybody's in fairly decent health. I mean, in different states of, we're all in various states of disrepair. I think Mike survived some cancer. Dave has some pulmonary issues that I know are pretty bad sometimes, and but we're trying to do our best and never forget. That's why I'm here with you today. I'm not here to I'm just here so people never forget, and that's why I speak around this town. I speak at schools and churches and things of that nature, just so people don't forget, because I think people forgot.
I thank you for that. I'm so sorry. I know it's very, very difficult, but thank you. It's important that you share the story. It's important that this be documented.
I agree. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.